The rain came down harder than expected, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and red as Maya hurried along the sidewalk, clutching her coat tighter around her. Her phone buzzed again in her hand, another missed call from her roommate asking where she was. Maya didn't answer. She was already late, exhausted from a double shift at the cafe, and all she wanted was to get home, kick off her shoes, and forget the day ever happened. When a sleek black car pulled up near the curb, its tinted window rolling down just slightly, she barely noticed. Her rideshare app showed a black sedan arriving, and in her tired state, that was enough. Without thinking twice, Maya yanked open the back door and slid inside, breathing out a sigh of relief as the warmth wrapped around her. The door shut with a solid, heavy thud, far heavier than any rideshare car she'd ever been in. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something darker, sharper, like expensive cologne. Maya looked up, about to mumble a quick apology for being late, when she froze. The man in the driver's seat glanced at her through the rearview mirror, his eyes dark, assessing, unreadable. He wasn't wearing a driver's cap or casual clothes. Instead, he wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his posture rigid, his hands steady on the wheel. This was not an Uber. Sorry, Maya said quickly, her heart beginning to race. I think I got in the wrong car. Before she could reach for the door, it locked with a soft click. Her breath caught. Hey, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. Please unlock the door. The driver didn't respond. Instead, the front passenger turned around, and Maya's confusion deepened. The woman staring back at her looked elegant and amused, her lips curling into a slow, knowing smile. She had sharp eyes, the kind that missed nothing, and a confidence that made Maya feel small in comparison. Well, the woman said lightly, as if commenting on the weather, this is interesting. I'm really sorry, Maya repeated, panic creeping into her chest. This was a mistake. The woman studied her for a moment, then laughed softly. Mistakes are my favorite kind of surprise. She leaned forward slightly. You can call me Sophia. Before Maya could respond, the driver spoke for the first time. Sophia, he said, his tone warning, we don't have time for this. Sophia waved him off. Relax. We have plenty of time. She turned back to Maya. You're soaked. And shaking. That won't do. I just want to go home, Maya said honestly. Please. Sophia tilted her head, considering her, then smiled wider. You might get your wish sooner than you think. Or later. Depends on how cooperative you are. Maya swallowed hard. Every instinct told her she'd stepped into something dangerous, something far bigger than a simple wrong car mistake. The car began to move, smoothly pulling away from the curb, the city sliding past outside the window. Where are you taking me? Maya asked. Sophia's eyes sparkled. To meet my brother. That single sentence made Maya's stomach drop. The car stopped in front of a towering building that looked more like a private fortress than an apartment complex. Security guards nodded as the car passed through iron gates, and Maya's fear turned into disbelief. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. She must be dreaming, or about to wake up any second. Inside, everything was quiet, polished, intimidating. Maya was escorted through marble halls until they reached a private elevator. Her legs felt weak as they rose higher and higher, each floor adding to the weight pressing on her chest. When the doors finally opened, a man stood waiting. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed as sharply as the driver downstairs. His presence filled the room without effort. Dark eyes met Maya's, and for a split second, something unreadable flashed across his face, surprise, maybe, or curiosity. Sophia clapped her hands together. Brother, she announced cheerfully, I brought you a gift. The man's gaze shifted to Sophia, then back to Maya. Explain, he said, his voice deep and calm, but edged with authority. She opened the wrong car door, Sophia replied. And I think fate finally listened to us. Us, he repeated. You, Sophia corrected. You need a date for the gala tomorrow night. And look at her. Sophia gestured toward Maya. Perfect. Maya's mouth fell open. What? No, absolutely not. I don't know who you people are, but I can't. The man raised a hand, silencing the room instantly. His eyes never left hers. What's your name? He asked. Maya, she answered. Maya, he repeated slowly, as if testing the sound of it. I'm Adrian. Something about the way he said his name made it clear she should know it already. Adrian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, yet strangely controlled. You're safe here, he said, though it sounded more like a statement than a promise. But you did walk into my life at a very inconvenient time. Sophia smiled, clearly pleased. Or a very convenient one. Maya's heart pounded as she realized the truth sinking in. She hadn't just gotten into the wrong car. She had walked straight into the world of a man people feared, a man whispered about in the city's darker corners. And now, for reasons she didn't yet understand, the mafia boss wanted her to pretend to be his girlfriend. Maya barely slept that night, even though the guest room she was placed in looked like something pulled straight from a luxury magazine, all soft lighting, silk sheets, and quiet that felt too expensive to breathe in. Her mind replayed Adrian's calm, unreadable expression over and over, the way his eyes had held hers as if he were measuring something invisible. She lay awake listening to the distant hum of the city far below, wondering how one wrong decision, one careless pull of a car door, had landed her in the penthouse of a man whose name alone carried weight. When morning finally came, it arrived with a knock so soft it almost felt polite for the situation she was in. A woman entered, professional and brisk, informing Maya she had a schedule, clothes to be fitted, and rules to learn. Maya tried to argue, to insist this was all a misunderstanding, but her words fell into the room like feathers, light, ineffective, easily ignored. By mid-morning, she was sitting in front of a mirror while strangers adjusted her hair and makeup, transforming her from an exhausted cafe worker into someone unrecognizable, someone who looked like she belonged in Adrian's world. The realization scared her more than the locked doors ever had. When Adrian finally appeared, he didn't comment on her appearance, but his eyes lingered for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, enough for Maya to notice. He motioned for everyone else to leave, and suddenly the room felt smaller, the air heavier. He explained the situation with unsettling calm. A public gala, powerful allies watching, enemies always searching for weakness. A fake girlfriend would silence rumors, project stability, send a message. Maya listened, arms crossed tightly, her heart racing. She told him she wasn't an actress, that she couldn't lie convincingly, that this was insane. Adrian didn't interrupt. When she finished, he simply said she wouldn't be lying, she would be playing a role based on truth. They would meet, talk, appear close, nothing more. He would protect her. The word protect sounded strange coming from a man like him, but there was something in his voice that made her believe he meant it. Still, fear twisted in her stomach as she realized refusing didn't feel like an option anymore. The afternoon passed in a blur of rehearsed conversations, small details drilled into her memory, how they supposedly met, how long they'd been together, what she liked, what he admired about her. Maya noticed how carefully Adrian chose his words, never raising his voice, never forcing, yet somehow guiding every decision. At one point, their hands brushed accidentally while practicing how they would enter the gala together, and the shock of it sent heat rushing up her arm. Adrian noticed, withdrawing immediately, his expression tightening for a moment before returning to calm neutrality. That brief crack unsettled her more than his authority ever could. By evening, she was emotionally exhausted, but there was no escaping the night ahead. The car ride to the gala was quiet, the city lights reflecting off the window like distant stars. Adrian sat beside her this time, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Stay near me," he said quietly. "If you feel uncomfortable, squeeze my hand." The simplicity of the instruction surprised her. She nodded, unsure why her chest felt tight. The gala itself was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, polished smiles, conversations that sounded friendly but felt sharp beneath the surface. Heads turned the moment Adrian entered, whispers rippling through the room like electricity. Maya's hand rested lightly on his arm, exactly as she'd been told, yet the touch felt more natural than she expected. People approached them constantly, powerful men and women greeting Adrian with respect mixed with caution, their eyes lingering on Maya with curiosity. She smiled, answered questions, played her part, but beneath it all, she was acutely aware of Adrian's presence, the subtle way he guided her, shielded her, kept her within reach. Then she noticed the woman watching them from across the room. She was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way, her gaze fixed on Maya with open hostility. When their eyes met, the woman's lips curved into a cold smile that sent a chill down Maya's spine. She leaned toward Adrian, whispering his name. He followed her gaze, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Don't worry," he murmured. "She's not important." But Maya could tell that was a lie. Later, as the night wore on, the tension only grew. A man approached Adrian with a forced grin, congratulating him on his relationship, his words laced with something darker. Maya felt it before Adrian did, the shift in energy, the subtle threat hidden beneath politeness. When the man finally walked away, Adrian exhaled slowly, his hand briefly tightening on Maya's waist as if grounding himself. You did well, he said softly. The praise felt strangely intimate. By the time they left, Maya was drained, her emotions tangled in confusion and adrenaline. Back in the car, silence settled between them again, but it felt different now, charged, heavy with unspoken thoughts. As the building came into view, Maya realized something that frightened her more than the danger surrounding Adrian's world. Somewhere between the rehearsed smiles and borrowed confidence, the fake role had begun to blur. And she wasn't sure anymore where pretending ended and something real began. Morning arrived quietly, but the tension from the night before lingered like smoke that refused to clear. Maya woke with the strange sensation of being watched, though when she opened her eyes, she was alone in the vast guest room. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was, then reality rushed back. The gala, the stairs, Adrian's steady hand at her waist, the dangerous woman across the room. She sat up slowly, pressing her palms into the soft mattress, trying to ground herself. This was supposed to be temporary. One night, one role, yet the unease in her chest told her the story had already shifted. When she stepped into the hallway later, dressed in clothes someone else had chosen for her again, she found Adrian standing near the windows, speaking quietly into his phone. His voice was low, controlled, but the words themselves were sharp, commanding. He ended the call the moment he noticed her, his expression smoothing instantly, though she sensed the storm beneath it. He told her they needed to talk, and something in his tone made her pulse quicken. They sat across from each other in the living room, sunlight cutting through the space between them. Adrian explained that her presence had done exactly what Sophia hoped, it had unsettled people. Old rivals, jealous allies, enemies who thought he was too predictable. Maya listened, dread pooling in her stomach as she realized she had unknowingly painted a target on herself. She asked the question she'd been avoiding since last night, when could she leave? Adrian was quiet for a moment too long. When he finally spoke, he said it wouldn't be safe yet. Not until things calmed down. His honesty should have comforted her, but instead it made her feel trapped in a cage made of silk and steel. As if summoned by the tension, Sophia appeared, completely unapologetic, declaring that Maya needed to relax, that fear showed on the face and that was dangerous. Against Maya's protests, Sophia dragged her out of the apartment later that afternoon, insisting they go somewhere public, somewhere normal. The irony wasn't lost on Maya as they walked through a high-end shopping district surrounded by discreet security. People glanced at them, unaware of the invisible lines of power and threat woven around every step. Sophia spoke freely, almost casually, about Adrian's past, how leadership had been forced on him young, how trust was a luxury he rarely allowed himself. Maya found herself listening more than she meant to, her image of him slowly shifting from untouchable mafia boss to something more complicated, more human. When Sophia suddenly stopped and pointed to a cafe across the street, Maya's heart stuttered. It looked painfully similar to the place she used to work. For a moment, her old life felt close enough to touch, and the contrast nearly broke her. That illusion shattered when a black car rolled past too slowly, its windows dark. Sophia's expression hardened instantly, all playfulness gone. She grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her back toward their own car, her voice sharp, urgent. Head down, she whispered. Maya obeyed without thinking, her pulse roaring in her ears. Back inside the vehicle, Sophia confirmed what Maya already feared, someone was watching. Testing. The ride back to the apartment felt longer than any before it, every turn filled with anticipation of something going wrong. Adrian was waiting when they returned, his jaw tight as Sophia explained what happened. His eyes moved to Maya, scanning her for injuries, and for the first time, she saw genuine anger flicker across his face, not at her, but for her. He ordered increased security immediately, his voice leaving no room for argument. That evening, Maya found herself restless, pacing the edge of the penthouse like a bird unsure where the cage ended. Adrian joined her quietly, handing her a glass of water, his fingers brushing hers. This time, neither of them pulled away. The silence between them stretched, thick and complicated. Maya finally asked why he chose her, why not someone trained, someone from his world. Adrian's answer was simple and unsettling. Because she was real. Because she hadn't looked at him with calculation or fear at first, only confusion. Because unpredictability was power. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. She admitted she was scared, not just of his enemies, but of how quickly this life was seeping into her. Adrian listened, really listened, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. He promised he wouldn't let anything happen to her. It wasn't dramatic or loud, just certain. Later that night, Maya stood on the balcony alone, city lights glowing beneath her like a restless sea. She thought about running, about finding a moment to disappear back into anonymity. But she also thought about the way Adrian had looked at her when danger crept close, the way his control cracked just enough to reveal concern. The realization terrified her. She wasn't just involved anymore, she was connected. Whether she wanted it or not, her fate was beginning to tangle with his. And somewhere deep down, beneath the fear and uncertainty, a dangerous curiosity had begun to bloom, whispering that walking away might not be as simple as opening the right car door next time. The tension that settled over the penthouse after that day never fully lifted, as if the walls themselves understood danger better than comfort. Maya began to notice the rhythm of Adrian's world, the way men checked hallways before she passed, the quiet codes spoken into earpieces, the subtle shifts in atmosphere whenever a call came through. She was no longer just a guest, she was a variable everyone accounted for. That realization followed her everywhere, pressing against her thoughts when she tried to sleep, when she stared out at the city, when she caught her reflection and barely recognized the confident woman looking back. Adrian kept his distance more than before, not coldly, but carefully, as if proximity itself had become a risk. Yet his attention never wavered. He checked in without hovering, asked if she needed anything without making it sound like an obligation. It was a balance she didn't understand, but she felt its weight. One afternoon, he invited her to join him for a drive, no explanations offered. Maya hesitated, memories of that first wrong car door flashing through her mind, but she nodded anyway. The city blurred past as they drove, silence stretching comfortably at first, then tightening as they left familiar streets behind. Adrian finally spoke, telling her he wanted her to see the reality of his world, not the polished version she'd been protected by. The honesty startled her. He took her to a neighborhood far removed from luxury, where people greeted him with cautious respect and quiet gratitude. Maya watched him interact with shop owners and families, his presence commanding yet restrained, and for the first time, she saw the leader beneath the reputation, a man holding together a fragile balance few understood. That fragile balance shattered later that night. The penthouse lights dimmed unexpectedly, plunging rooms into shadow before emergency systems kicked in. Maya's heart slammed against her ribs as voices echoed down the hall, sharp and urgent. Adrian reached her in seconds, pulling her close, his body instinctively shielding hers. He moved with calm precision, guiding her through hidden corridors she hadn't known existed. The power outage was no accident, that much was clear. Somewhere below, alarms sounded, followed by the unmistakable tension of confrontation. Maya's fear peaked, but Adrian's hand at her back was steady, grounding. In a secure room, he told her to stay silent, his eyes locking onto hers with fierce intensity. Time stretched, each second loud in her ears. When the noise finally subsided, Adrian returned to her, his expression dark, controlled, but his shoulders tense with restrained fury. He told her someone had tested his defenses, and failed. Yet the fact that they'd tried at all changed everything. From that moment, the fake relationship became something more than a cover. It became a shield. Public appearances increased, carefully planned and heavily guarded. Maya learned to move with confidence she didn't always feel, to read rooms the way Adrian did, to sense danger in pauses and glances. The role began to feel less like acting and more like survival. One evening, after a particularly tense event, they found themselves alone in the quiet aftermath, adrenaline still humming beneath their skin. Maya finally snapped under the weight of it all, demanding to know how long this would last, how long she'd be expected to live between fear and luxury, between truth and illusion. Adrian didn't deflect this time. He admitted he didn't know. The enemies circling him were patient, calculating. Removing her too soon could invite worse consequences. The honesty hurt more than false reassurance ever could. Their argument burned hot and fast, emotions colliding with words neither meant to say. Maya accused him of trapping her. Adrian countered that she was safer here than anywhere else. The room seemed to vibrate with the tension between them until suddenly it snapped, not into anger, but into something far more dangerous. Silence fell, thick and charged. They stood too close, breaths uneven, eyes searching. Adrian stepped back first, as if afraid of what might happen if he didn't. He apologized, quietly, sincerely, and that apology cracked something open inside Maya. She realized he wasn't using her out of cruelty or convenience. He was protecting her the only way he knew how, even if it meant crossing lines he'd sworn never to cross. That night, sleep evaded her again. Maya lay awake replaying every look, every word, every unspoken thought. The fake relationship was no longer just a story told to outsiders. It was changing both of them in ways neither had planned. She wondered how much of her fear now came from external threats, and how much came from the growing truth she was afraid to face. Somewhere between danger and closeness, something real was taking shape, and the closer it grew, the more impossible escape seemed. Maya understood then that opening the wrong car door hadn't just altered her path. It had placed her at the center of a storm that was only beginning to form, and walking away now would require more courage than staying ever had. The next few days unfolded with an uneasy calm that made Maya more nervous than open danger ever had. It was the kind of quiet that felt deliberate, like the pause before a storm breaks. Adrian became busier, disappearing into meetings that stretched for hours, his return marked by the subtle exhaustion in his eyes and the guarded way he held himself. Maya learned not to ask too many questions, but the distance gnawed at her. She wasn't just a protected guest anymore. She was a factor in decisions being made behind closed doors, whether she liked it or not. Sophia noticed the shift immediately and tried to distract her with humor and sharp commentary, but even she couldn't fully mask her concern. One evening, while the city glowed below them, Sophia admitted that things were more dangerous than Adrian was letting on. Old alliances were cracking, rivals were pushing boundaries, and Maya's sudden appearance had accelerated timelines that were meant to move slowly. The truth settled heavy in Maya's chest. She wasn't just collateral damage, she was leverage. That realization became painfully clear the night Adrian came back injured. It wasn't dramatic, no ambulance or frantic shouting, just a quiet knock at her door and Adrian standing there with a shallow cut along his temple, his suit jacket stained darker at the shoulder. Panic surged through Maya as she pulled him inside, her hands shaking as she helped clean the wound. He tried to downplay it, but she could see the tension coiled beneath his calm. For the first time, the danger wasn't abstract or distant, it was bleeding in front of her. As she worked, their closeness felt different, stripped of pretense. Adrian watched her with an intensity that made her chest tighten, as if he were memorizing her face. When she finished, she scolded him through shaky breaths, anger and fear tangling together. He listened without interruption, then surprised her by thanking her. Not for the care, but for staying. That night, they talked honestly for the first time. Adrian spoke about power, about how loneliness often came disguised as control. He admitted he never planned to involve anyone innocent in his world, and yet somehow, Maya had walked straight into it. Maya confessed how lost she felt, torn between wanting her old life back and feeling pulled towards something she didn't fully understand. The air between them shifted, heavy with unspoken emotion. When Adrian reached for her hand, it wasn't calculated or cautious, it was human. Maya didn't pull away. The contact was simple, grounding, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unasked questions. They didn't cross any lines that night, but something irrevocable changed. The fake relationship was no longer just an act maintained for survival, it had grown roots. The following day, the threat finally surfaced openly. A message arrived, delivered through channels designed to intimidate rather than inform. Maya wasn't meant to see it, but she caught enough to understand the implication. She was now officially part of the game. Fear flooded her, sharp and undeniable, but beneath it burned a stubborn resolve she didn't recognize in herself. When Adrian tried to send her away to a safer location, she refused. Not out of recklessness, but because she understood that running now would only prove her value as a target. Her defiance stunned him. He argued, pleaded even, but she held her ground. She wouldn't be moved like a pawn anymore. If she was going to be used, it would be on her terms. That decision reshaped everything. Adrian began including her in conversations he'd once shielded her from, explaining just enough for her to understand the risks. Maya learned to read his silences, to anticipate the moments when his control slipped and emotion threatened to surface. They became a unit, not just in public, but privately, navigating danger together. Yet with that unity came vulnerability. The closer they grew, the more exposed Adrian became, and Maya knew his enemies would sense it too. Love, real or not, was the one weakness no amount of power could fully protect. The night before another high-stakes event, Maya stood alone again on the balcony, the city stretching endlessly below. Adrian joined her, silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost hesitant. He told her that if things went wrong, she had to trust him completely. The words sounded like both a promise and a goodbye. Maya turned to him, fear and determination mixing in her chest, and realized the truth she could no longer deny. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped pretending. What began as a mistake had become a choice, and whatever happened next, it would change both of them forever. The storm was no longer approaching, it was already here. The night of the event arrived wrapped in a tension so thick it felt like a second skin. Maya could sense it in the way the guards moved, sharper and more alert than usual, and in the controlled stillness Adrian carried as he dressed, every motion precise, deliberate. There was no rehearsal this time, no playful coaching or reassuring smiles. What they were walking into was real, and both of them knew it. As Maya slipped into the elegant dress chosen for her, she caught Adrian watching her reflection in the mirror, his expression unreadable yet intense. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if he was memorizing her the way she had memorized him, every quiet habit, every shift in tone that revealed what he tried so hard to hide. The drive to the venue passed in near silence, broken only when Adrian reached for her hand, not as a signal for the role, but as something grounding. Maya laced her fingers through his without thinking, surprised by how natural it felt, how much strength she drew from the contact. The event unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance balanced on a blade's edge. The room was filled with powerful figures whose smiles never quite reached their eyes, conversations layered with meanings beneath meanings. Maya stayed close to Adrian, hyper-aware of every glance thrown their way. She noticed how often eyes lingered on her, how whispers followed her movement. This time, she wasn't just an accessory, she was a message. Adrian introduced her with quiet pride, his hand firm at the small of her back, and for the first time, Maya felt less like a shield and more like a partner. But the illusion cracked when she spotted the same dangerous woman from the earlier gala watching them again, this time not alone. A man stood beside her, older, colder, his gaze sharp and calculating as it settled on Maya. Fear crept up her spine, but she kept her expression calm, remembering everything Adrian had taught her. The confrontation came subtly, as these things always did. The man approached Adrian with polite words that carried the weight of a challenge. He congratulated him on his commitment, his eyes flicking to Maya with thinly veiled assessment. Maya felt Adrian tense beside her, the faintest shift that only she would notice. When the man suggested a private conversation, Maya's instincts screamed. Adrian hesitated, then did something unexpected. He asked Maya to come with them. The decision shocked everyone involved, including her, but she understood instantly. Leaving her behind would only invite risk. In a quiet room away from the crowd, the air thickened with threat. The man spoke in half-truths and veiled warnings, making it clear he knew exactly who Maya was and how quickly her presence had changed the balance of power. Maya's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped closer to Adrian, her hand slipping into his, her voice steady as she spoke up for the first time. She said she wasn't a weakness. She was a choice. The silence that followed felt explosive. The man studied her for a long moment, then laughed softly, as if amused by something only he understood. He warned Adrian that choices came with consequences and left the room with a promise hanging in the air like smoke. The moment the door closed, Adrian turned to Maya, his eyes dark with emotion. Anger, fear, something dangerously close to admiration all collided in his gaze. He demanded to know what she was thinking, why she would risk provoking someone like that. Maya answered honestly, that she was tired of being spoken about like an object, tired of being silent. Her voice trembled, but she didn't back down. Adrian exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair, then did something that stunned her. He apologized, not for the danger, but forever, putting her in a position where she had to defend her own existence. They left the event early, the air between them charged and unresolved. Back in the car, the dam finally broke. Words spilled out, fear, frustration, unspoken truths neither could keep buried anymore. Adrian admitted that caring about her had compromised him, that every instinct screamed to pull her away from his world, even as another part of him refused to let her go. Maya confessed that despite everything, she didn't want to leave, not yet. The admission hung between them, raw and terrifying. When the car stopped, they didn't move right away. The city lights reflected in the windows, distant and unreal. Adrian turned to her, his voice low, stripped of authority. He told her this was the last chance to walk away, that after tonight, there would be no pretending, only consequences. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and understood what the choice meant. Safety versus truth. Distance versus connection. She thought about her old life, the simplicity of it, and realized it already felt like someone else's memory. Slowly, deliberately, she shook her head. She wasn't walking away. Not from him. Not from what they had become. The moment stretched, heavy with everything unsaid, until Adrian reached for her face, stopping just short of touching her, as if asking permission without words. Maya closed the distance herself. The kiss that followed was not desperate or reckless, it was quiet, controlled, and devastatingly real. When they finally pulled apart, both of them knew there was no turning back. That night, as Maya lay awake beside the man who was no longer just pretending to be her partner, she felt fear coil tightly in her chest, but beneath it was something stronger. Resolve. Whatever storm was coming, she had chosen her place within it. And the world beyond those walls was already shifting in response. The aftermath of that night changed everything, not with noise or spectacle, but with a quiet, irreversible shift neither of them could undo. Morning light filtered into the penthouse, soft and almost deceptive, illuminating a reality that felt heavier than ever. Maya woke with the echo of Adrian's presence still wrapped around her, the memory of the choice she'd made settling deep into her bones. There was no panic this time, no immediate urge to run. Instead, there was clarity, sharp, frightening, and steady. Adrian was already awake, standing near the window, his back to her, shoulders tense as if he were carrying the weight of the city itself. When he turned, his expression held something new, not control, not distance, but vulnerability. He told her that the kiss had crossed a line he could never uncross, and that his enemies would sense the change instantly. Maya listened without interruption, understanding that this wasn't regret, it was warning. The warning proved true sooner than expected. By midday, information started coming in, fragments at first, then patterns. Moves were being made, alliances tested, pressure applied in subtle but unmistakable ways. Adrian's name carried power, but power invited challenge, and now he had given his rivals something they hadn't seen before, something to threaten. Maya felt the shift in the air, the way the penthouse buzzed with restrained urgency. Security doubled. Routes changed. Conversations stopped when she entered a room, not out of exclusion, but caution. She hated that most of all. When she confronted Adrian about it, he didn't deny it. He told her the truth. Protecting her now required secrecy, distance, and sometimes silence. The words stung, but she understood the necessity behind them. Loving him, even quietly, meant accepting the shadows that came with him. That evening, Sophia arrived with news that cut through the tension like a blade. A rival faction had issued an invitation, formal, polite, and dangerous. A meeting under the guise of peace. Adrian's refusal would be seen as weakness. His acceptance would be a risk no one could fully control. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Maya was the unspoken variable in the equation. Everyone knew it. When Adrian finally spoke, he said he would attend. Alone. The word hit Maya harder than she expected. She argued, demanded logic, accused him of pushing her away to protect her. Adrian didn't deny it. He simply told her that if anything happened to him, she had to leave immediately, disappear completely. The finality in his voice terrified her. That night, fear wrapped itself around Maya like a second skin. She watched Adrian prepare, memorizing the way he moved, the quiet rituals that grounded him before danger. When she finally broke, admitting she was scared of losing him, Adrian pulled her close, his hold firm, almost desperate. He told her that she had already changed him more than any enemy ever could, that she had reminded him what it felt like to choose something for himself rather than for survival. The honesty shattered her defenses. She promised she wouldn't disappear, not without a fight. They held onto each other longer than necessary, as if time itself were an enemy pressing in from all sides. The meeting unfolded away from her, but Maya felt every minute of it like a physical ache. She waited in the penthouse, surrounded by guards, staring at her phone as if sheer will could make it ring. Hours stretched thin, anxiety clawing at her resolve. When the call finally came, it wasn't Adrian's voice, it was Sophia's, sharp and controlled, telling her to stay exactly where she was. That was when panic took hold. Something had gone wrong. The calm shattered as alarms sounded softly through the building. Security. shifting into emergency positions. Maya's heart pounded as she realized the truth she'd been trying to avoid. This was no longer about power or perception. It was about survival. Adrian returned late that night, his calm fractured by exhaustion and barely restrained fury. The meeting had been a trap, not to kill him, but to send a message. They knew about Maya, not just that she existed, but that she mattered. The knowledge hit her like ice water. She wasn't just a symbol anymore. She was a target. Adrian blamed himself openly, a rare crack in his armor that left Maya breathless. She stopped him before he could spiral, reminding him that she had chosen this, that she wasn't a helpless bystander. The argument burned hot, fear feeding every word, until it collapsed into silence heavy with understanding. As dawn approached, the city below unaware of the war being waged in shadows, Maya stood beside Adrian on the balcony. The horizon glowed faintly, a fragile promise of morning. She knew the illusion of safety was gone for good. Whatever came next would demand sacrifice, distance, secrecy, or something far worse. Yet as Adrian's hand found hers, steady and sure, Maya understood something with chilling clarity. Opening the wrong car door had been an accident. Staying now was not. The final move was coming, and when it did, it would test everything they had built between fear and choice, between power and love. The final days before everything changed passed in a strange, suspended state, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Maya felt it in the quiet conversations, the tightened security, the way Adrian's attention never fully left her even when his mind was occupied elsewhere. Plans were being made, contingencies layered upon contingencies, and for the first time, Maya was part of them openly. Not as bait, not as a secret, but as someone whose safety mattered enough to reshape strategy. Adrian explained what would happen next with brutal honesty, a decisive move to dismantle the threat before it grew teeth sharp enough to tear everything apart. It would be dangerous. It would be final. And afterward, nothing would be the same. Maya listened, fear steady but no longer paralyzing, and told him she wasn't leaving his side. The words were simple, but the choice behind them carried weight. Adrian didn't argue this time. He only nodded, his expression tight with the knowledge that loving someone meant accepting risks he could never fully control. The night it happened, the city glittered as if unaware of the reckoning unfolding in its shadows. Adrian left with his men, calm and focused, his goodbye to Maya quiet and deliberate. He told her no matter what she heard, she was to trust the plan. Trust him. The door closed behind him with a finality that made her chest ache. Hours crawled by. Maya paced, sat, stood again, her thoughts looping between hope and dread. When distant sirens echoed through the city, her heart lurched, but she forced herself to breathe, to remember every promise, every carefully laid detail. Then the building stirred, voices, movement, urgency, and Sophia appeared, her composure cracked just enough to betray the gravity of the moment. The move had worked, she said. The rival faction was exposed, dismantled from the inside out. But there had been complications. The word echoed painfully as minutes stretched thin again. Adrian returned just before dawn. He looked exhausted, a faint bruise darkening his jaw, but he was alive, standing, unmistakably real. The relief that flooded Maya nearly dropped her to her knees. She crossed the room in seconds, and this time, there was no restraint, no hesitation. Adrian pulled her into him, holding on as if letting go might undo everything they'd survived. The quiet that followed was different from before, no longer heavy with dread, but weighted with aftermath. He told her the threat was gone, not entirely erased, but broken enough to give them something he hadn't had in years, space to choose. The admission softened something in his eyes that Maya had never seen before. With the danger receding, reality rushed in. The fake relationship, the story that had protected them, could finally end. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. It had begun as a shield and become something far more real than either had planned. Adrian asked her what she wanted next, truly wanted, not what she thought she owed him or feared to lose. The question stunned her with its sincerity. Maya thought of her old life, the simplicity, the safety, and realized she could never fully return to it unchanged. She also thought of the nights filled with fear and purpose, of choosing courage over comfort. She told him she wanted honesty, partnership, and the freedom to leave if she ever needed to, without chains, without threats. Adrian accepted her terms without negotiation. Power, he said, meant nothing if it required possession. The days that followed were quieter, lighter. Security relaxed. Laughter returned to the penthouse. Maya ventured out alone again, feeling the city differently now, not as something that could swallow her whole, but as a place she could navigate with open eyes. Adrian stood beside her in public without the pretense of performance, and the difference was subtle but profound. There were no rehearsed gestures, no calculated displays, just two people choosing to stand together despite the cost. When the story finally spread that the Mafia boss's mysterious girlfriend had disappeared, it wasn't a lie. The role had ended. What remained was something no rumor could define. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Maya and Adrian stood on the balcony where so many truths had been spoken. The city hummed below, alive and indifferent. Maya realized then that her life had split cleanly into before and after, a single mistake that became a doorway rather than a dead end. Adrian asked her, quietly, if she ever wished she'd opened a different car door that night. Maya smiled, thinking of fear, of choice, of the strange courage it took to stay. She told him no. Some doors, she said, only look wrong until you step through them. Adrian's answer was a gentle squeeze of her hand, a promise without words. As night settled in, Maya understood the final truth of it all. She hadn't been rescued. She hadn't been trapped. She had chosen. And in choosing, she had rewritten the story, from a fake girlfriend born of danger to a partner forged in honesty. The wrong car door had led her into the storm, but it was her decision to stay that carried her safely through it, into a future no longer defined by fear, but by the strength to face whatever came next, together.